when we experience things like a low mood or a headache, bloating, depression, these kind of things will come about because your body is not producing the right amount of neurotransmitters to make you feel a certain way. And that's usually because, it's happening all in the gut. So if you're not eating the right things, you're not going to be producing the right things, right? But if you're feeding your gut the right things, and the quality of your bacteria is going to be better. So again, like balance, but how can we help the quality?
Eyes open, hearts ready. Welcome to Wellness Deconstructed. I am Zeeya Jaffer, and together we're stepping into the arena of authentic well-being. Myth-busting, truth-seeking, and definitely life-changing. Break free, live boldly. It's time for a conscious uprising. Hello guys, welcome back to Wellness Deconstructed. I'm your host Zeeya Jaffer, and today we're talking all about food and nutrition for mental health. And for that, today our guest is a UK-based nutritionist, a food scientist, a sensory scientist, and a cookbook author. Founder of the Flavor Academy, she supports, educates, and eliminates the guesswork for families who seek to build a strong foundation in nutrition and cooking, helping individuals implement an approach which is free of rules, guilts, and shoulds, but full of simple and easy ideas, making them feel empowered and confident that they are equipped with all the knowledge required to help children and families develop healthy, positive eating habits and food experiences. She also carries out sensory consultancy work for companies looking to assess consumer insights and consumer experiences with products and services. And that guest is Zenia. Welcome, Zenia.
Thank you so much for having me, Zeeya.
It's a pleasure. Your bio is very interesting, and I have so many questions from there. What is a food scientist?
There's not many of us, to be honest, as well as sensory scientists. It's such a niche job role, and I feel really grateful to be able to be in that space. It's a very, very new role in terms of, it's probably about 12 years old. Yeah. So when I started dabbling in the industry, that's when it was really developed. But a food scientist is somebody who really understands everything behind food, so the science behind food essentially. So, in terms of preserving nutrients, how are we going to do that? Do we use particular cooking methods in the food industry? What kind of foods or what kind of ingredients do we use for formulations to ensure that we're preserving things for a longer period of time? So I would be the person behind all of that, behind the scenes of new product development when it comes to the industry. But also in terms of understanding nutrition and how deep it is embedded within foods as well.
Since you are the food scientist and you know everything about food, why don't we start with talking about how what you eat affects your body in general?
Okay, so you've heard of the slogan saying, you are what you eat?
Yes, exactly.
And essentially, I truly believe that, you have to use your body as a temple. It is something where you have to think about what you're ingesting, what you're consuming. We're living also in a day and age where things are very easily available. There's a lot of convenience foods. We also don't have time as individuals right now to be cooking things from scratch. So think about what you are actually ingesting, what you're giving your children, what you're giving your families, what you're cooking on a daily basis and during your meal times. But when it comes to nutrition, it's really, really important to also understand that there is a bi-directional relationship when it comes to gut and also the brain. So the gut is actually looked at as a second brain. And I'm sure you've heard that one. And I think that is phenomenal. It's very, very interesting because directly what we eat will affect our gut, and what our gut is going through is going to essentially affect what is going on in our brain and affect our moods. And it doesn't just stop at moods. I mean, moods can be vast, right? It is to do with your sleep, how the quality of your sleep, also your mood swings, also the concentration, your memory retention. All of that is going to be directly related to what you're ingesting. So if you are ingesting things which are highly processed, a lot of sugary foods, things like that, your gut is not going to be producing the right bacteria. And, in turn, it's going to not be producing the right neurotransmitters. And actually 95% of serotonin, which is your You know, your feel good, like your mood hormone is produced in your gut.
That's
and I think that's,
amazing.
yeah, it's amazing. And 5% only is in the brain. But I think there's a huge misconception that people think everything is produced in the brain.
Definitely.
You know, but actually it's not correct. So I find that very interesting. And I think it's so important to, you know, ingest more fruits, vegetables, a varied diet, things with whole grains. And, you know, like how can we ingest things which are going to make us feel good, make us feel better? You know, we always even hear things like, I've got that gut feeling, or I feel sick to my stomach. Those are your hormones speaking, you know. Like, I mean, I know people who, you know, get a loose bowel when they have something coming up or whatever. Again, that's fear.
Anxiety also.
Anxiety.
Yeah.
You know, people feel sick when something's coming up. Again, all to do with your gut. So it's very interesting how it all works.
Yeah, and since you brought that up, like how when you're feeling a certain way, your gut is also affected.
Yeah.
Like I feel like you get very bloated and have a loose bowel movement, especially when you're anxious.
Yes.
And then you don't understand like what's going on. Like,
Yeah.
oh, I'm feeling anxious and now I'm sick too.
Exactly.
But it's all actually connected,
Yeah.
right?
It's actually really it's an overload of toxins. So how can we reduce that? How can we really, you know, naturally detoxify ourselves? Because our bodies have the ability to do that through our organs, our liver, you know, things like our stomach, our digestive tract. We do have the ability. Everybody has the ability to naturally do that. You know, we don't need to go on diets, or we don't need to do certain things. But it's about eating certain particular like foods. How can we change our diet to suit, you know, gaining good bacteria within our gut? You know. So my recommendation would be to eat things which are going to reduce oxidative stress, things which are anti-inflammatory. You know, things like red cabbage are brilliant. People don't think of red cabbage. Green leafy veg, so stuff like spinach and kale. You must eat a lot of that kind of stuff within your household. How do you do a variety of things within your meal planning? Because I know you do a lot of meal planning as well.
Yeah. So before I answer that question, I want to take you back to oxidative stress.
Yeah.
I feel like when I saw my functional medicine practitioner for the first time, she's the one that told me from my reports that I have a lot of oxidative stress. And I'm like, what is that? Never heard of that kind of stress before. So can you explain what that means?
So oxidative stress is when you've got more free radicals within the body. So these are things which will not be, you know, it's not, your cells are not effectively being used within the body. So not in a way where it will be anti-inflammatory. In fact, they will reduce
Their functioning?
Their functioning.
Okay.
Exactly. They reduce their functioning. So when we think about foods and what we're eating, we want to be eating things which are antioxidant, and this is where the whole oxidative stress things comes from, because if they're antioxidant, they'll be working against them and reducing that stress that it has on our cells. Right, so things like legumes and nuts are brilliant because they've got a lot of antioxidants. We hear this word a lot. You know, vitamin E, things in berries as well. So vitamin C as well has a lot of that. So strawberries, berries, oranges, lemons, all these citrus foods. Okay, and that's why, you know, a lot of people focus on fruits and vegetables. But actually fiber has a brilliant way of helping our bodies in terms of producing short chain fatty acids. So I briefly spoke about this as well. When we ingest fiber rich foods, they will ferment in our digestive tract and produce these short chain fatty acids, producing then good bacteria within our gut. So it's deeper than just eating a fruit or a vegetable, or are we eating enough? But yeah, I find that very, very interesting about how we perceive fruit and vegetables, you know, because also fiber is equally as important.
Definitely. Yeah, so what I hear you say is that oxidative stress is when your body is under stress because its functioning has slowed down, or like your cells have less capacity to function at its optimal level.
Exactly.
So, and that's why your body's in stress, because you keep putting food in it.
Yeah.
But they
the
cannot,
wrong types of food.
Yeah, but it can't digest it optimally and absorb the nutrition.
Sure.
So that's why your body's under stress. And so you should have antioxidants which stimulate your brain, not your brain, but your cells to function more optimally.
Yes, and reduce the oxidative stress on the cells.
That makes it so clear. Because I've been having strawberries and guava and like using a lot of peppers, because I know peppers also have a lot of vitamin C.
Peppers, yes.
Into the diet. But I was just wondering, like, what is this oxidative stress? And this one thing, I don't know why I hadn't Googled. So I didn't even know. So thank you for sharing that. I'll go back to what you asked me about incorporating different meals, different vegetables.
So a variety, because I know you do a lot of meal planning, and I know it's very effective, especially when you have a family. So how do you cope with that, and how do you, like, what kind of themes do you incorporate in the week to ensure that you and your family are eating a varied diet? And what do you do, like, what are your tips and advice on that, and then I can share.
Yeah, sure. So what I grow most of the vegetables around my house. So a lot of it depends on what my harvest for the week is.
How lovely.
So, or like what harvest I've got in the morning particularly.
Wow.
So I do meal plan in advance, which is Mondays are my home management days. So I meal plan on Mondays. What we tried, I have like a whole process. So we go through the kitchen, we see what's going on in the kitchen, what's left over from last week that we can use before it gets spoiled, etc., etc. And then we incorporate that. Then we also consider what fresh harvest I have. And also the best part is that the harvest is varied. So sometimes I have a lot of greens, sometimes I have a lot of other veggies. Sometimes, I mean, fruits, there's not that many, but I get some strawberries, sometimes bananas, sometimes. So that affects what I shop as well during the week. And then I use your cookbook and other cookbooks.
Thank you.
And we try to incorporate like a few new recipes into our meal plan every week so we can experiment. And just like experiment with not just a new dish, but like new flavors, new cuisines. And there's a lot of vegetables that, of course, I can't grow everything here. But some of them like that are...
What do you grow here?
So I have kale, I have spinach, I have the curly kale, I have tomato, onions, potato, carrot, cucumber, zucchini, broccoli, cauliflower.
Wow, amazing.
So I have like all the basic stuff that I would eat, that would be eaten in a Swahili and Indian household.
Wonderful.
But there's a lot that like comes imported as well. Like not everything we get here. So I like to experiment with those veggies as well, because we can't find them all the time. They're seasonal. So I incorporate that also, but that depends on what I get when I go shopping. So I have a basic meal plan before that. And of course, like I always try to have a balance between the carbs and the protein and the fiber and stuff. Because I'm really trying to like incorporate veggies per se, or like varied veggies into my kids' diet. And my second one is like super enthusiastic about salads and loves vegetables, but my older one is more like a meat and carbs guy. So like trying to incorporate that into his diet as well. It gets tricky a little bit, but I have to find, exactly. And like as long as I feel like integrating it in some way, not to trick him per se, but also to tell him like, look, this has this, maybe you like it in this way.
And also, I feel like your children are at an age where you can start speaking about food in a very authentic and transparent manner. I mean, a lot of the things that I do when I'm coaching and when I'm working with families, and even just on social media, what we see is hiding vegetables, a hidden pasta sauce. And for me, I'm like, they really need to consciously learn how to love vegetables, how to like things. And I'm not saying love every single vegetable, but I'm also saying that you can have preferences and your child will develop preferences.
Definitely.
I mean, this is a great little way to touch on another topic, which is what is our relationship with food as parents, as adults. I mean, we grow up thinking, you know, a certain way and now we have our own food preferences, but how did that even come about? Do we have any negative associations with food that have now just been transferred into our adulthood?
Definitely.
And also then in turn, when we have children, what are we transferring onto them that are actually our issues or challenges? You know, so I love to speak about this kind of stuff just because it's trending now, and also because a lot of parents come to me and they're like, my child doesn't eat this and my child doesn't eat that. And I'm like, okay, let's talk about this a little bit more. Why? You know, why doesn't your child eat that? And is there a reason, particular reason why? And, you know, this whole thing about force feeding, just one more bite.
Exactly what I was
One more
say.
bite. Finish your plate. You have to finish your plate. You don't have to do anything. Because in turn, that will lead to a negative relationship with food.
Yeah, that's exactly what I wanted to bring up, because I was raised like that. Like you have to finish what's on your plate, otherwise like it's a sin because you're wasting food.
It's bad luck.
Yeah, and like there's people in this world that are starving, and what are you doing, not appreciating food? And I'm like, that comparison doesn't help. Firstly, it makes it would make me feel bad that I am a bad person doing that.
Yes.
But also forcing or shoving it down a child's throat, of course, is not going to have a good impact long term to the relationship that they have with food. Even with the type of food, I feel like for me, I was forced to have rotli, like chapatis. I would hate it, and I would wait for everyone to finish in my house so that I could eat, or I'd eat before, so that I wouldn't have to eat 2 rotis. Like that was a rule in my house.
May I ask, what is your relationship now with the rotli?
I hate rotlis. I love rice and noodles. You give me rice or noodles, I will eat it every day. But rotli, I'm like, no. Shak rotli?
Because you've got a negative association.
Yeah.
And I always say that our relationship with food is quite malleable. We can always change, we can always learn to like, learn to love. And can you imagine as a child, if you can mold their future palate right from the beginning, how beautiful, like it's a blank canvas and you have the opportunity to paint that picture. And I love that because, and when I am coaching and when I am telling parents about this, they never thought about it from that perspective. And then it's like, oh, what have I done wrong? Why did I do that? I said, no, because it's a malleable relationship. It can change all the time. Definitely. It's adaptive, it's flexible. So I like that. So I really think that's important to talk about, because a lot of people don't look within. And also the idea of a healthy relationship, it's extremely subjective. It can be a very complicated word, healthy. And even recently when I've been talking about it, like what is a healthy relationship with food? It's not about, complying to dietary things or saying that you have to eat all fruit and veg. It's actually eating a broad range of things in moderation. Also eating cake, because I've seen it. Yeah, I love that. I'm going to have it. I'm not hungry, but I've seen the cake and I like it. I like a strawberry cheesecake, so I will have a bit, And it's about regulating that, but it's also regulating your emotions when it comes to food. So a little bit like that cake, it's going to make me feel good. I'm going to have it. Also knowing your fullness cues, your hunger cues, and also making the most of food experiences anywhere you are. That is also a healthy relationship with food. It's not just about in the household. If you go to a new restaurant, can you maybe choose something new that you can't make at home? If you go traveling, what are the local ingredients? Really utilizing every situation to your advantage, essentially. So yeah, I really wanted to share that because I think it's super important.
Definitely, thank you. And I feel like as parents, we need to make the change now in our homes so that we can raise a generation that has a healthier relationship with food. So since we're at kids, and you were talking about processed food, like what about the impact of this processed food and sugar, like heavily loaded sugar foods, on the gut of kids and how that is affecting kids' mental health nowadays?
So a really, interesting part of research, which you might find quite shocking, really, but the onset of depression in children now is age 6.
Whoa.
Yeah. And that for me is quite, it's very shocking.
Yeah, it's disturbing.
It's disturbing, that's the word. And I've been thinking about it so much this week. So I just think, like, what are we actually doing? And a lot of people say, look, so my husband's a dentist, I'm a nutritionist. Do I allow my child to have sugar? So I have a nearly 4-year-old and she's starting weaning soon, 6-month-old Neely. And as a nutritionist, and obviously my husband being a dentist, we have had some direction in being particular about what we are going to offer our children and the way we want to sort of mold their relationship with food. I never said no, but I was careful. Okay, I was cautious until at least to the age of like 2 to 3, especially like at 3. But then you have to also start thinking at 3, they're going to socially start seeing sugar and they're going to be invited to lots of parties. Are you going to be that mom, be like, right, you sit in the corner, you're not going to have cake, you're not having any sweets, and you are definitely not having any juice, And every single person at that party is having a bit of cake, a bit of sugar. Like, that is so isolating and actually can have a huge negative impact on how they perceive food, even in general, not just, that particular moment. And I always say, like, think about it from the child's perspective. So, right, when we're talking about sugar, moderation, and you know what I mean moderation? Like, 1 or 2 puddings a week's fine. I know, I mean, I'm UK based, so pudding is a big thing, and it is, but a lot of people are getting more and more healthier, but also labeling stuff like, if you eat that, you'll get a pudding. It doesn't really work like that, you know? It doesn't matter if you eat it or not, you can still have something sweet, and that's what I like to call it. I like to call it something sweet. And I think that's really, really important to get into your children from a young age. But when we are talking about sugar, it's not feeding your bacteria in your gut good things, right? It's actually going to start producing toxins. And it's not just sugar, it's processed foods like, you know, crisps and things which have been dehydrated, things which have been processed to such a high level, denatured in terms of they don't have any nutritional value. And fine, they're okay. But, you know, I also get asked as a nutrition coach and also as a weaning coach, we have a lot of these snacks, like, you know, I don't want to name any brands, but we have puffs and we have pouches and things like that. Don't get me wrong. I have clients who will give their children pouches, right? My job is to then say, this is why, you know, if you make home cooked food, if you do things like differently, this is how we can manage it and this is why it's better. But even if I have to work with a pouch, how can I get that child to get the right nutrition? Do I add a bit of quinoa into that, you know, spaghetti bolognese, which it says it is, in a pouch, but then I'm adding quinoa. So I'm teaching also the parent, like, how can we add nutritional value to these things, you know? But back to the topic, it is something which we really, really have to manage from a young age and create a habit, okay? So like now my son is nearly 4. He'll go for the one odd chocolate. So Christmas and Easter, I have no, this is gonna bite me, I know, but touch wood. So I don't generally have a problem with Easter and especially Christmas when there's chocolate everywhere. And I love the fact that I can do that. I don't have to be scrambling around hiding chocolate, or I don't have a secret stash drawer or, you know, a snack drawer, because a lot of people have this. Yes, you give your children a free hand, but you balance it. You make it so that it's a healthy relationship, you know. You don't say no, but you also explain the implications of why, what can it do. And, you know, in turn, when your gut is not actually producing the right bacteria, it's not going to produce the right neurotransmitters, so like serotonin, and in turn, it's going to go straight to your brain, and, you know, memory retention is going to be lost. Their sleep quality is going to be horrendous. Now, if you think about it, when they are going to school the next day, are they going to be able to concentrate because they've not slept well? Are they going to be able to, you know, understand what's going on in the day because they're probably tired? Their day-to-day performance is really, really affected.
Also their attention span. I feel like,
100%, because you're tired, lethargy, you know, things like this. So we really need to be focusing on foods which are going to be providing that. But also, I'm not saying no. I'm not saying don't give your children sugar. Don't give your, you know, children things where they're going to feel like isolated when you go to a social event, for example. So I think that's also about building a positive relationship with food.
Yeah, and I feel like it's also about balance, right?
Balance,
like, don't go either extremes where you're like robbing your child of any experience of sugar, because then when they go out into the public, they don't want to feel like the odd one out. But also don't overload them.
Yes.
Because I heard this statement that the addiction to sugar is worse than addiction to cocaine. Because it creates the reward pathways which are so much stronger than even addiction to cocaine. So, and that scared me. I'm like, shit, like this thing is in our house. On a daily basis, we consume it in some or the other way, and it's so easy to get addicted to it, especially when you create a reward pathway by telling your kids that, okay, if you do this, then, so if you're a good boy or a good girl, then you will get it. So even, I feel like those are the kind of adults that grow up and eat, like, you know, like load themselves on sugar or like chocolates and stuff when they are struggling. Because they're like, okay, this is going to make me feel good, kind of thing.
So I actually recently, this is a really great point, but I recently commented on an article with Hello Magazine. It's about 2 weeks ago. And it was about how Sarah Jessica Parker, now with her girls, her daughters, she allows them to have this autonomy when it comes to food. She allows them to choose to, you know, to be able to be like, yes, okay, this is what I'd like to eat, this is not what I'd like to eat, because growing up, she wasn't allowed things. And I found it really, really interesting to be commenting on something like that as an expert, because It's so true. It is so true. She, as soon as she was able to leave home, all she did was want sugar, chocolate, and all these sugary foods. And that, again, stems from just the fact that you can't have it. Psychologically, when you are not around those people, you want it more. You want to create that pathway because you didn't have it. I had a very, very interesting conversation with somebody today about, is this a similar sort of situation when, kids go to uni at 18, and they're not allowed to go out, they're not allowed to drink alcohol, they haven't been exposed to any of it, and then they hit 18 and they've been given this ridiculous amount of freedom.
They don't know what to do with it.
They don't know what to do. So you either go that way or you go that way, and the extreme way is actually potentially the really most negative and dangerous pathway to be going down. Destructive. And it's a very, very similar situation with sugar and how you're building this relationship with food, because it's the same thing. It's the same psychology behind it. And we could go on talking about this for
definitely.
ages.
So I want to bring you back to how what we eat affects our gut health and in turn affects our mental health. Yeah. So I know I was reading in Dr. Mark Hyman's book that there is actually a part of the nervous system that entirely connects our gut to our brain. Yeah. I know there is autonomic nervous system and
it's the enteric nervous system.
Yeah, okay, that's the word. So because I don't remember these these terms. So there's a special one that it connects the gut or intestines to your brain.
Yes.
And that regulates your nervous system in a way as well. And in this day and age, I feel like we're not eating food that is clean.
No.
Apart from the processed food and the sugars and stuff that is there in the food that we buy ready-made from supermarket, but also the vegetables that we buy.
Yeah.
We buy varied because we want to include everything in our diet and everything.
Sure.
But these things are sprayed.
Yeah, pesticides.
You don't know
herbicides.
what kind of water is being sprayed on as well. There was an article in the news saying that sukuma wiki has been growing on the side of the dirty sewage rivers. And now that is available in the market.
Yeah.
So it's toxic.
Of course, because it's also airborne as well.
Exactly.
You don't know what is traveling up, what is in the soil,
Yeah.
what the soil is being fed.
Exactly. So I'm buying sukuma wiki from the market thinking it's fresh and clean.
Yeah.
But it's not.
Yeah.
It's so much more toxic than eating clean sukuma wiki, or I'd rather not eat any sukuma wiki.
I mean that's the challenge now that we're having, because companies are trying to meet demand. They're also trying to import and export. They're trying to do a lot of these things. So the demand is huge, but then they can't grow as quick enough. So, using all of these things as well. But also, we're getting new species of things that are coming from somewhere. All this stuff with the global warming, weather, new things are coming about. So they have to manage that too. So from a industry perspective, I can see where these growers and the farmers are coming from, but also from a consumer perspective, it's quite scary because we don't know what we're ingesting, and how is that now playing a huge role in our gut quality, our gut bacteria quality, and what can we do? So I know now on the market you have something called a veggie wash. I don't know if you've seen it.
Yes, Green Thing Kenya has it here.
Okay, fine. I wasn't sure exactly where it had it, but veggie wash is something you can use. It's perfectly safe. I know a lot of parents here are using it for this reason. I've done a couple of presentations last week and I heard the same thing. Everyone wants an organic vegetable or fruit, and there's not many people actually doing that. You'd think in Kenya there would be, but actually there's not that many. And also soaking fruit and veg in distilled white vinegar as well.
Yeah, I do
and then
that.
drying that with the berries and stuff. So that will help kill off some of the pesticides, wash it off as well. And, you will have that, close to natural organic thing. But, at the end of the day, only so much is in our control. And when it comes to balance, again, what do you do? Do you either grow all your own things, which I think you're doing a fantastic job with? I mean, if I had the opportunity, I would do the same. And, you either grow your own, you have a particular place where you get, farm to fork, exactly where it's coming from. The person, what they're doing, the quality of their ingredients, and, or you weigh it out and you do some organic, and then some things you can't grow, you buy from the shop. And it is really, really tough because nobody knows where our stuff is actually coming from. And, even though there's regulations and there's things like that, I mean, you never really know like how much they're adhering to things, and it's really, yeah, it's a scary thought in terms of industry, because I've worked in industry. I know what needs to be done in terms of trying to meet consumer demand, but also complying with quality. Yeah.
So what is this toxin overload which is happening in our bodies?
Okay.
How does that affect our mental health? Because I know that's disturbing the quality of bacteria in our gut.
Yeah.
And then the nervous system, enteric nervous system,
Enteric nervous
is
system.
directly communicating that to our brain.
So when we talk about a toxin or a toxic overload, you know, when we experience things like a low mood or a headache, bloating, depression, you know, we spoke about this earlier as well. These kind of things will come about because your body is not producing the right amount of neurotransmitters to make you feel a certain way. And that's usually because, you know, it's happening all in the gut. So the enteric nervous system is working with the vagus nerve, which is the bidirectional relationship that the two are having. And they're just working in tandem. It's like a vicious cycle. If you're not eating the right things, you're not going to be producing the right things, right? But if you're feeding your gut the right things, and the quality of your bacteria is going to be better. So again, like balance, like, but how can we help the quality? Like I said, you know, drinking more water, fiber-rich foods, because you're going to in turn produce more short-chain fatty acids, which is going to be anti-inflammatory. It's going to help with, you know, helping with combating other illnesses and diseases that you're having, maybe brewing in the body. Also things like antioxidants, like we mentioned, nuts, legumes, beans, all these kind of things will have so many good things for your digestive tract. But in terms of like mood and how we can help reduce things like that, you know, it's not, you know, we're focusing a lot about food. It's also about your environment, you know, going for a walk, the sunshine, vitamin D, all of these processes are going to help with our mood and in turn serotonin production. You know, there's so much focus on food, but also like a bit of exercise, some yoga,
For sure.
that kind of stuff. So like from an Ayurvedic perspective as well, you know, I'm sure it's the holistic approach to everything.
Yeah.
Food is huge,
Of
but
course.
it's also your well-being as a whole.
Overall well-being affects your mental health.
Yeah.
Definitely. And I feel like food is something we put inside our body.
Yeah.
And from the Ayurvedic perspective, I also feel like it's also the type of food you eat according to your body type.
Yes.
So I can't eat salads. I love eating salads.
Is it like a cold food?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah.
So
yeah.
it's more like raw, dry food
Yeah.
will create more bloating.
Okay. And how do you find that out? So how do you know
So
what kind of
you
a body
have to do an
type you are?
Ayurvedic test.
Right, okay.
So there's 3 types of body types: Vata, Pitta, and Kapha. Vata is like the airy one, Pitta is like the fiery one,
Yeah.
and Kapha is like the stable, slow. I don't want to say the fatty one.
Yeah.
But it's more like one that can retain more
Sure.
muscle, retain more fat, and
Right.
layer up nicely.
Okay.
So with Vata body type, because I have Vata body type, I can't eat salads much.
Okay.
If I do have to eat salad, I have to wait for the summer season, because you also have to eat according to the season, right? Like in winter, you want to eat more warm food so that it warms your digestion and increases your digestive fire. Whereas in summer, you can eat a salad. But as a Vata person, again, in summer, I would have to wait for afternoon times and make sure that my salad is oiled properly, so that it's not dry and it's not creating more floatiness or airiness in my body, which would then otherwise lead to gas, bloating, etc. And then that, because there's bloating and all these things in your gut, it affects your mental health, because that's when you get anxious,
Yes.
because you become more floaty, more airy. So it links it
Wow.
all together like that. And that's
Yeah.
why I put so much pressure or like importance on what we eat and when we eat.
Yeah.
So I always feel like we need to live in connection with the nature as much as possible.
Yes,
So live
100%.
according to the seasons.
Yeah.
And learn how to eat according to your body type.
Yes.
And I feel like my journey into Ayurveda was what sparked this. And when I realized that, I'm like, wow. Whereas if a Kapha person, they can eat salad anytime. It wouldn't affect
them at all.
Yeah.
Wow.
But
What about a Pitta person?
Pitta person are fiery.
Yeah.
So like their digestive fire is
So
super
do they need to
high.
avoid particular foods?
I would say
Like
they would want to avoid like spicy food.
Yeah, exactly.
Because they already
Heat.
have high heat.
Yeah.
So they would like benefit from eating like sweet foods and calming or cooling food. Like
Right.
cucumber would be great for
Yes.
them.
Yeah.
Whereas cucumber, if a kapha person is eating, I would ask them to eat in summer and not too much of it in winter.
Very interesting.
Because they're already cool.
Exactly.
And kapha people are also very, very prone to depression.
Right. Okay.
Because they're very slow-moving, subtle people that have
really
energy
take
stuck.
The fast pace.
Yes, exactly. But they're also very loving and cuddly and like someone that you want to get comfort from.
Yeah. Okay.
So it's like it's so interesting to see that according to body type, but also according to what you eat, you can support your body and support your mental health accordingly.
It's about learning your body part.
Definitely.
Like I said earlier, like your body is a temple, and we really should take more notice, take more charge with how we're feeling. I mean, as a mum myself, I was speaking about this earlier. A lot of us say we don't have time.
Yeah.
That's the best line ever. Like, we don't have time. We don't have time to this. I don't have time. But second child in, I'm like, no, I'm creating time, even if it means 5 minutes of me doing something for myself to recalibrate or to just, get my mental strength, my mental health, and also just my body. Like if I'm going to walk outside for 5 minutes, sit in my car for 5 minutes just for peace, I will do that, And it's also just about creating time to learn your body. And, it's worth people understanding your body type from that space as well. But something actually really interesting in my book is I have something called Eat the Rainbow. And when you were talking about if you're eating cucumber, it evokes certain emotions and things like that. Again, it's the same situation. When you think about eating the rainbow, so you're thinking about eating like red and orange foods and then yellow types of foods. And when I've categorized that in my book, you'll see that I've actually explained how particular foods will evoke certain emotions. And again, it just stems from that whole situation about like even when you're looking at things, does it make you feel a certain way? Like if I had a completely beige plate, depending on my background, also depending on my relationship with food, if that was all I ate growing up, I'd be quite happy with a beige plate. But because my relationship with food, I like to say is quite healthy, and also with my parents' background, my mum's a dietitian as well, we've got family restaurants and all of that kind of stuff. But when you are focusing on that, when you're understanding how to eat certain things, it makes a huge difference.
Definitely.
It makes a difference when you're thinking, that if I eat a green salad, usually we would think a green salad will make us feel wholesome, make us feel great. And it does, when you're looking at generally, but I'm only being a representative figure here, but generally a lot of people eat, like they'll say, I need to have a salad because I binged at the weekend. So Monday lunchtime is like salad without fail. But that's because these are feel-good things. So no matter how you're going to eat them, what your perception is, at least you're trying, and you're trying to create a lifestyle which is sustainable as well.
Sure.
I mean, this is the other thing. It's like, there's no point saying, right, after this talk, I'm just going to have only fruits and vegetables and only this. And, no, it's also about trying to find stuff that's sustainable for you, for your family. You have to also think allergies. Are you guys vegetarian? Are you non-vegetarian? So it's really, really important to learn like what you all are, because we're all going to be different, right? We're all individuals. And again, this is the other thing when I'm coaching, a lot of parents say, like the first time I did weaning or the first time I introduced my child, he or she was absolutely fine. My second one doesn't eat anything. And I'm like, because they're two people. They're two different types of people. They're two different bodies, and you also really have to nurture that. I think that's really, really important. It's not about comparing your two kids or also comparing body types, if we're on that topic.
Definitely.
So learning individual body types, I think, is super important, and doing that again from a young age. I mean, that's fascinating, right?
And I really like that you also mentioned in your cookbook, you have this whole wheel, right, with colors, and you also have it with like textures.
Yes,
you do, right?
I do.
Yeah. And that was when I received your book. That was the thing that fascinated me the most, because I'm like, I can actually look at the wheel and incorporate like different colors and different textures, especially when you're weaning a child. Like, okay, I have older kids now, so that's the one, the texture wheel.
So exactly.
This is it, guys.
Yeah, this was
It's so beautiful to look at, firstly, but it's also so interesting to like study it and see like what what different things you can experiment with.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, the reason I actually put this in, like I was this is my absolute baby, you know, and I was like, shall I put it in? Shall I not put it in? But at the end of the day, I was going to publish a book that I wanted to stay within your family for years to come. I didn't want something that was going to collect dust. I wanted something which you were going to utilize, you know, utilize different ingredients. And so this was a wonderful way to do it. So you have the flavor wheel, and it's all categorized into like vegetables, fruits, fridge and pantry, so you know exactly what you're looking at, and also meat, poultry and fish. So say for example, like even on here, if I quickly want to eat, if I want to, you know, expose my child or myself even to a particular fruit, like I've not had a nectarine in ages, but that has reminded me that maybe when I go shopping, I'm going to try and find a nectarine.
Yeah.
So it's also just a great reminder on how to provide variety, but the texture wheel is so good because again, we miss a lot of textures when we're eating and we don't realize this, and we don't look at food from this perspective, and I look at it from a very science background, and you know, how am I going to incorporate the 5 senses when it comes to my child's feeding journey, or even just my journey as a whole, which I'm going to share something about in a second. But you know, something like rubbery, you would never say boiled egg white is rubbery, but you wouldn't say that. But the point is, your child is getting that texture, or you are getting that texture, you know. But this is something that I want to share, because you know, even if we're not exposing our children to things on a regular basis, they're going to forget. We're going to forget. During my pregnancy, my first pregnancy, kind of happened this time around as well. But I completely did not like avocado. I just had a complete aversion.
Yeah, I saw you talking about it.
To avocado. And like now, especially because I'm in Kenya, I'm like, there's no way. I have to be able to try and like utilize this ingredient, because it's so readily available here, you know. Like it's not £3 for one avocado. Like £3 is like nearly, oh my God, nearly 400 bob for like one avocado. And I mean, that kind of hurts. But, you know, for me now, Avir, my older one, he is very particular about avocado. Like he'll try it, he'll dabble in it, but he is not inclined to eat it, or he doesn't have an affinity to it. Yeah, I love an avocado milkshake or whatever it is. And now what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to eat it myself. So then I can like, okay, just try this, just have one more spoon. And I don't force feed him, but you know, I want him to feel it. I want him to be able to play with it. I want to use a fun recipe. So there's like an avo choco mousse, which is very, very healthy. So not just chocolate, but it's only got cocoa powder in it. But, you know, trying to also then look at your food journey, and like even the wheel will give you that. It'll give you those pointers on what haven't you had in a long time. Because essentially, if you haven't had anything for a while, how are your children going to be exposed to it? You know, unless they go shopping on their own, which they don't. So it's about thinking on that level as well.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And I feel like this cookbook is a really good resource to have.
Thank you.
For every mom or any home manager that is responsible for the kitchen and is cooking or meal planning, even, to incorporate variety.
Yeah.
And especially the texture. That's the one that intrigued me the most. Would be really cool for someone that is weaning their child and want to expose them to different textures, because when my kids were growing up, I had no clue about textures.
Yeah.
Okay, I knew about colors, but I'm like, textures, no.
So that's a very interesting point, actually, and I'm gonna stop you there, just because when it comes to textures, I'm so particular about transitioning onto more textured foods, because also what I'm finding right now is, whilst I'm coaching, I'm finding 3-year-olds on purees. Now that is. It's something which I like to help parents. I like to guide them, just because people don't know this fact. And when you're not transitioning onto more textured foods, your speech development is actually delayed. And not many people know that until their child is much later. And they're like, actually, when it came to feeding and weaning and introducing solids, they were on purees for a really long time. So in turn, they're not actually using their jaw muscles, their tongue, their lip movement, the lateral tongue movement on the side, because when they're chewing, they're using all these muscles, these facial muscles as well. Now that is going to help in turn to help you with speech and with words and particular articulation. Now if your child hasn't had any of that, if they don't have the opportunity to chew or to move or maneuver food around their mouth, they're not going to be able to develop speech effectively. And I mean, I just did a talk this morning, and so many people were so shocked by that fact. And I said, well, yeah, because it's these kind of things that people don't really teach you, especially when it comes to introducing your children to new foods and, you know, especially, well, weaning, essentially. And that's why I bringing my science background to weaning has been really, really beneficial for so many families, because they're like, we never thought about textures from that perspective at all. And I feel like that's where I stand out. I stand out as a sensory scientist, as a food scientist, because I'm bringing new things to the table from that perspective. And it's not just about, here, have banana or have broccoli puree or this. It's also about understanding your flavor profiles, you know. You know, I put a reel up the other day about broccoli not being your first food. And I got so much engagement with that, because people are like, oh my God, we never thought of that. We never even thought like that wasn't, I mean, everybody thinks because of social norms, that is the first food you should give. But I'm like, imagine that was your first food. Really, okay, broccoli's great, like it's great for so many reasons, but it's not the most exciting ingredient, right? And also that's what my book does. I do 5 ways with, where, you know, how do you utilize ingredients? How do you make them fun in different ways? But yeah, even just from that reel, you know, so many people change their idea and their perspective on how particular single ingredients actually taste. So, you know, each thing is going to have a different flavor profile. But we don't look at food on a molecular level like I do. And I think if I can just break it down the way I have done in my book and the way I do when I'm talking, it's just nice for people to get that little bit of extra education that this is actually another layer to food. You know,
yeah,
so.
That is really helpful.
Yeah,
like you're looking at it from a different perspective, or like a deeper perspective.
But a very beneficial one. Like, so for example, like the textures. You know, no one would have told you that if you don't transition onto more textured foods, it's going to in turn affect speech development. So it's little things like that which, you know, they're very important. You know, and they're really significant to child development. So it's really, I find it really fascinating that, you know, I'm able to share all this stuff.
Yeah, sure. So taking it back to adults, you know, like when we're sad, we just want to eat like a pizza and a soda, and then we feel worse the next day because we have no energy. The slump, right? So I wanted to talk a little bit about how the type of food you put in your body also affects your energy levels.
100%, yeah. So it's going to affect your insulin levels. It's going to affect, again, your gut microflora, your microbiota. It's going to change the quality of your gut bacteria, right? So if you're having something that is fried, something that is white flour, all these things which are not very high in nutritional value, again, it's going to just change how your gut is reacting and what kind of bacteria it's producing, and it's not going to be producing the right bacteria, right? And in turn, it's going to be producing toxins. And that's the toxins that's going to be making you feel lethargic, really tired, and also it's not going to be producing the right serotonin levels, which again doesn't make you feel happy, makes you feel like not sad, but if it's going to be producing something
like
else,
basically.
Like blah, exactly. Like you're not feeling good about it. And also these toxins make you feel constipated as well. So that bloating and that, you know, that gassy feel, all of that is the bacteria producing these really unhealthy toxins, or the toxins are unhealthy anyway, but these unhealthy things which are then making you feel all of this stuff. So really, really important to then, you know, how do you fix that? Right, the next day you go and have a salad. But again, like I said, it's about balance. It's not also about overindulging. It's about, if you want a pizza, have a pizza. Yeah. But if you're going to have a pizza 5 days in a row, that's definitely going to affect you on like day 6. Yeah. You know, you're not going to feel amazing, just because of the build-up also of bacteria, bad bacteria that you've got in your gut. You know, so I would say I don't really like labeling good and bad. I don't do it with kids either. And I would just say it's like unhealthy bacteria, because we do have bacteria anyway in our gut. Sure. So there's the good, well, the healthy and the unhealthy. So it's about really maintaining the good bacteria or the healthy bacteria, and how do we increase the quality of it, you know, get the new ones in, and how do we really just harvest it, maintain it, and detoxify ourselves naturally. Yeah.
So I know, like with the toxins, because of all these things, the toxin overload reduces the functioning of our liver, right?
Yeah.
So what would you suggest would be the first step to start detoxing or like start cleansing your system again? So Ayurvedically,
Yeah.
I would always say that your liver slows down its process when it's overloaded with toxins, right?
Yeah.
And the one thing that stimulates the liver to start processing the toxins out is to have bitter herbs.
Okay.
So I always like recommend my clients to have dandelion.
Right,
That
yes.
is like the bitter one. Aloe vera.
Yeah.
What are the other bitter ones? I've forgotten. Neem.
Yeah. And would you cook them or are these raw?
No, like tea.
Okay, like tea.
Like I always
Okay.
prefer having
Yeah.
it in form of tea, so it's
Yeah.
easier. Like
Yes.
because
green tea is most
exactly. So it's not. Doesn't taste that bad. Okay,
Yeah.
aloe vera does taste bad, and you have to take it like medicine.
Yeah.
But dandelion tea is really nice to have at like 4 p.m. You know,
Yeah.
and like just put it in your routine.
Would these be fresh or dried?
It can come in tea bags.
Okay,
Like you
yeah.
can buy them ready.
And that
I buy them
doesn't,
from Healthy You.
when
for
it's
now.
dried or when it's not really in its fresh form, does that change the nutritional quality of it?
No,
when-
I don't
from
think
an
so. I mean,
Ayurvedic
fresh
perspective?
is better.
Yeah.
For sure.
It's hard to ingest, isn't
Exactly.
it? Yeah.
And also you don't find it readily.
Yes. Okay.
Like I know we can find mint, basil, tulsi, all these things,
Yeah.
which we can just pluck and put it in our
Yeah.
tea and have that. But dandelion is not easily available.
No.
Neem is easily available,
Neem,
so you can
yes.
just put that in your hot water and drink it.
very
That's
bitter.
fine.
I
Very
know
bitter.
neem is very bitter, but so high in what it can do. So
Exactly.
anti-inflammatory and all of these things from an Ayurvedic perspective is, I
Yeah.
think, so fascinating. But not many people know about these. And I
Exactly.
think now the trend is actually picking up where people are trying to find out more about what they can have. So I'll pick up on your thing about herbs and spices. So things like ginger, garlic, turmeric as well. You know, those are very anti-inflammatory, great for the body, you know, and how we can incorporate that as well in our daily meals. I'm not saying have like this much turmeric every day, but the little that we can do every day would really, really help. You know, it'll help, even if it doesn't help this much, it will help this much. And then every day create a habit. Create a habit and make it sustainable.
Yeah, for sure. I really like that. And I really appreciate the Indian cooking style for this, because we're putting a pinch of ginger, a pinch of turmeric, a pinch of black pepper, a pinch of cinnamon in most of our foods.
Yes.
Like while cooking.
All the time.
Yeah, all the
Yeah.
time. So it's just a part and parcel of our lives.
Yeah.
And since you asked about the fresh and the dry ones, for turmeric particularly, fresh turmeric is really strong, like really heating for the body. So I would always want it to be dried and powdered.
Right, yes.
Because the heat reduces, but the effect as an anti-inflammatory it has
Yeah.
stays the same.
Stays the same.
And then
Okay.
a lot of the spices are also activated when you put them in oil.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
like some people just like want to chew on turmeric because it's anti-inflammatory, but that's actually can
like turmeric capsules as well.
yeah,
You know,
but
now
that sometimes
so-
can like do bad
The
more
other
than
way,
good.
yeah. Yeah.
And that's why I really again appreciate the Indian cooking style the way we're taught, is because not telling us the exact why behind what they're doing, they're actually doing really good stuff because you're actually activating the ingredients when you're putting them in oil.
Yes.
And when
so
I learned that in Ayurveda, I'm like, wow, that's why they're doing this, you know, like
the tadka. and
tadka,
the-
exactly.
Yeah,
before
absolutely.
putting the food or before putting the veggies in. And I'm like, yeah, that makes so much sense.
I do love it when you see on Instagram it's like a 5-ingredient curry in a slow cooker. And I'm like, you've just literally put everything in. No disrespect to anybody who does this, but I'm like, that's really not how you make a curry, you know? And I'm like, you need to be able to cook the spices. And there's a
Yeah,
reason behind
exactly.
all of that. It's not just from a flavor perspective, but also from a nutritional perspective, how much of a difference it actually makes when you are doing the tadka or, you know, tempering the spices, for example. So even as ground or as seeds.
Yes.
So that's really, really important as well from that point of view. And I love that.
Yeah, thanks. So my last question before we close is about supplements.
Yeah.
I know that we eat all this food and try to be as clean as possible, but again, in this day and age, we just don't get enough from our foods, right?
Yeah.
Whether it's vitamin D or Bs or omegas. So what are your thoughts on that? I'll share mine later.
Okay. So I think perfectly fine to supplement your body with supplements because, like you said, it's also very difficult from a lifestyle perspective to ingest all of these things naturally, and also how much do you need to eat to get that requirement? Like, it's a lot. So if it can be concentrated into like a little, like, capsule or whatever it is, then that's fine. But it's also the quality of the supplement, of what you're ingesting, and how is it actually going to react in your body. For some people, supplements don't actually react well. It depends on your body type, like we were talking. Sure. People will have multivitamins and then like, I feel great the next day. But is it a psychological effect that that you've had a supplement, so you're going to feel good the next day? Yeah. Or is it actually that your body is reacting to it and you are feeling good? For us, like, obviously, because I'm UK based, I know having a little bit of extra vitamin D is going to benefit me, because I don't get that, and vitamin D is so important, especially in the Asian communities.
Exactly.
We don't have that melanin, so it's very, very important to weigh it out.
Yeah.
If that, and depending on what stage you are in your life, postpartum, you're going to be depleted as hell. So nutritionally, you have to be able to ingest all this stuff, but also, do you feel like it? Do you feel like having all that veg right after you delivered? Probably not, So getting what you can when you can is really, really important, but also the quality of what you are having. Like, be very particular about who you're buying from. Do your research. Do your research on, that supplement's more expensive than that. Yeah, there must be a reason. One is food grade and one might not be. There's a couple of companies now that are starting to make very, very, rather than them being synthetic, they're actually made from the food itself, and that's giving your body the real thing.
Yeah.
And I think that's a much better way of introducing your bodies to supplements rather than synthetically.
Definitely. So, and I think it's also important to know exactly what your body needs, because sometimes your body is not absorbing the right.
Exactly.
Like, even if you are eating like loads of certain food, but your body is just not absorbing that nutrient, right? Like, whether it's, I don't know, B12, I think there's some people that are just cannot absorb B12 well, right?
Yeah, and you need it. You really need B12.
And as Asians, we're just deficient in vitamin D naturally.
Yes.
Our body just cannot absorb, our skin just doesn't absorb enough of vitamin D. So I think it's important to know that, and also like testing regularly.
Because your body's going to change.
Yes, exactly. Wow. So testing regularly and seeing like what your body is deficient of and whatnot. And the one thing that I would recommend is seeing a functional medicine practitioner, and doing like a hormone test. Like, what I did was the Dutch test, which is dry urine tests for comprehensive hormones. That's like the thing.
Yeah.
And it showed me like my progesterone levels, estrogen, DHEA, testosterone, everything. Yeah. And I could literally see how my body works on the inside in terms of my hormones, and then could decide like what are the exact supplements I need, what are the lifestyle changes I need to make.
How regular do you do that test then?
I've only done it once.
Okay.
And I think you need to do it maybe once a year, not more than that. Yeah. So then you can understand like where your body, how much your body is producing the particular hormone and how much is it absorbing or not. Yeah. And based on that, I felt like I could know exactly what vitamins I needed to take.
Sure.
But also, I read this in Dr. Mark Hyman's book, like I was telling you, which scared me a lot, that in trying to communicate messages from your body to your brain, the neurotransmitting cells are like jelly-like.
Yes.
And when you're having too much of the saturated fats, they become hardened.
Wow.
So they're supposed to be actually jelly-like so that they can vibrate while they're touching each other and communicate.
Cohesive.
Yes, and they communicate to the brain the messages from the brain through the vibration from the jelly-like structure.
Wow.
And when you're having the saturated ones, they become saturated fats, they become hardened. So they can't vibrate and communicate further onto the brain. And that's what breaks the channel of communication and causes...
Very separated then.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then that's what causes like dementia, Alzheimer's.
Wow. Wild.
Memory loss. And I was just like, oh my God, I need omega-3, like bring it on.
Now.
Yeah, because I know I'm not getting enough from my food. Yeah. Like I don't eat like that much fish or salmon particularly in my diet on a regular basis.
I think generally even in Kenya people don't eat much salmon.
Yeah.
Because that's what I would recommend is a fatty fish.
Because I'm like, again, freaking out that the salmon coming here is God knows from where, and whether it's like farmed or it's naturally caught. We don't know about it. So then you're stuck in this thing, like whether you should eat for the omegas or you're eating a lot of toxins along with that.
Yeah.
So that was something that like really jazzed me, and I'm like, okay, we're starting omegas from now. But I really like that you said know where it's coming from and how it is sourced.
Exactly.
And for that, you need to like really do your research and find the right type of multivitamins.
So yeah, the pharmaceutical industry, I mean, I can't say very much about it, but we all know that every industry, is in it to win it, rather.
Yeah.
And we just have to be very, very careful with marketing claims. Even from a food perspective, all that stuff that you see on, I mean, okay, I'll give you a really, really plain example, like over here, like Ribena high in vitamin C. But what about all the sugar in Ribena? But over here, like I'm talking particularly in Kenya, like people think vitamin C, so I'll give my child Ribena when they're not feeling well. And I'm like, okay, feeling well is not that, but also not on a daily basis, So reading the claims, being very particular about, understanding marketing as well, like what they want you to buy, So be careful, be cautious about it. I'm not saying don't buy it, but don't take it on a, like that level of like, oh yeah, it says vitamin C. Oh, I must have vitamin C. But how much? What is the claim behind that? So being very careful about that. And just knowing where things come from. I think it's super important, and understanding from that perspective where you're getting things from and what you're putting into your body.
Yeah, sure. Thank you for sharing.
Okay,
that was really, really insightful.
Thank you.
But before we close, I always take my guests through a rapid fire round, which is like a little quiz.
Okay.
Just so the audience can get to know you a little better.
Sure.
Okay. Are you ready?
Yes. How bad is this? Okay.
No, it's not too bad. Don't worry. It's easy. It's questions related to mental health.
Perfect. Yeah.
Okay. So what's your daily non-negotiable habit for your mental health?
I need to have a shower in peace.
Nice one.
Yeah.
As a mom, you need that. Do you prefer guided meditation or music meditation? And you're a new mom, so I understand if you don't do any meditation. And you can openly say that. Do not feel ashamed.
I don't currently do any meditation, but I do a lot of yoga practice.
Nice.
I feel like when I am in the moment, I do try and do my own sort of meditative practice, even if it's, even if it's that just 5 minutes, like you're saying.
Yeah.
But yoga for me, I feel, is that whole sort of overall well-being.
Definitely. Would you rather sleep for an hour or read a book for an hour? I feel like I know this
Sleep
answer.
for an hour. I'm sorry, I love reading, but I think for me it's sleep.
Yeah.
Because quality of sleep affects everything.
Of course,
right?
and you're a new mom,
Mood.
so you're not
Yes.
getting enough sleep at night for sure. Would you call a friend or text a friend?
Call a friend.
Alone time or play a board game?
Alone time.
Netflix show or YouTube channel?
Netflix show.
Play a sport or do a workout?
Ooh. I think do a workout.
What's your personal mantra or affirmation that keeps you going?
Everything is a phase and this will pass.
Nice.
Because I feel like you get very stuck in the moment.
True.
And your head will spiral and you can't really get yourself out of it. But if you tell yourself that it's just a phase, it will pass, it usually does, and things always work out. And I think it's about being mindful that things are going to be okay.
That's great. So the last one, what's one piece of advice that you will leave our audience with in terms of food and nutrition for their mental health?
Use your body as a temple. Know exactly what you're ingesting. Sometimes it's not in our control, but be cautious about how you're developing a positive relationship with food, whether it's for yourself or whether it's for your whole family. But understand where what you're ingesting is coming from, because it'll directly affect your mental health in terms of anxiety, depression, mood, sleep quality. And also, try and understand the body a bit more, understand more about what I've been talking about, like the gut-brain axis, because it will blow your mind,
Yeah.
And it's just important to be able to get into the flow of learning about food and also learning about the ingredients that we are being exposed to on a daily basis.
Sure. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
And as a token of appreciation, we have a little present for you.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much for having me.
I hope you like it.
Honestly. Thank you.
Thanks for being here. Thank you guys for watching another episode with me. I hope you really enjoyed it. Thank you very much to our brand partners, Lulu Kitololo, Earth's Tones, and Sarah Organics. Remember, like, comment, share, and subscribe because your support means everything to us. Until next time, keep prioritizing your well-being.